We started Simon Tov Reish Peiches, page 302, Tov Reish Peiches, we started that. We got to the end of Sif Hey. But I'd like to just go back. We left out quite a few Mishnah Berurahs. There's one or two I'd just like to go back and read before we continue. The first of all, Sif Kotan Aleph, at the beginning of the Simon on page 302. We saw that there's two different dates of Purim. There's the 14th and the 15th, depending on where you live. Right? So the Mishnah Berurah here just gives us a Hagdama to explain why there's two different days of Purim. Okay? So we've got an Aleph. Right? The Shulchan Aruch tells us that any city that was walled at the time of Yeshua Bino, when Bnei Israel entered Eretz Yisrael, reads on the 15th. So the Mishnah explains: at the time of Mordechai, the time of the miracle, the Jews everywhere fought on the 13th and rested on the 14th. But also they made the 14th into a day of feast and joy. In Shushan, as it says in the Megillah, the Jews fought an extra day. They fought on the 14th as well, the 13th, and then an additional day on the 14th. But also Yom Tov at Tezvav, they only rested and had their feast on the 15th. Because at the time of the miracle of Purim, it was divided into 2 days. So too, when Mordechai and Esther, with the agreement of the Anshe Knesset Gdola, decided to fix Purim for generations, they also they also split it into 2 days. It would have been fitting, would have been correct to have said that any walled city like Shushan should have the same din as Shushan. Last is possessed of to make on the 15th. They should have done it like that. Any walled city should be like Shushan. They should have really made it. It would be logical that any city with the wall around it at the time of the Nes of Purim, that they should read on Tezvav like Shushan. That's what they should have done. Logic. Sorry. Because Eretz Yisrael was distracted at that time. Right? It was during the time of Golus Bovel. It was after Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed Eretz Yisrael. So therefore there were no walled cities in Eretz Yisrael at the time. They'd been destroyed by the Babylonians. It would turn out then that the cities in Chutz La'aretz with walls would be more choshev, more important than the walled cities in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, because of the COVID, because of the honor of Eretz Yisrael, they didn't want to make the takana like that. That walled cities at the time of the miracle of Purim should read like Shushan, because then it would turn out there would be no cities in Eretz Yisrael reading on Tezvav, only cities in Chutz La'aretz. So therefore, they said that any walled city at the time of Yeshua ben Nun should read on the 15th like Shushan. Even though they aren't walled now, because they were in destruction. And all the rest on 14th, Levad Shushan, except for Shushan. Shushan did not have a wall at the time of Yeshua ben Nun, Shushan itself. Even so, they read on Tezvav because the Nes happened in Shushan, right? So it's slightly different. I made a slight error when I said it there on Wednesday. Okay, the reason why Yerushalayim reads is because even though it didn't have a wall at the time of the Nes of Purim, however, because of the covered of the whole of Eretz Yisrael, Chazal made the takana that any city walled at the time of Yeshua ben Nun should read like Shushan. Shushan didn't have a wall at that time, but because the actual Nes happened in Shushan, Shushan's also added to that list. Okay, and we mentioned that nowadays the only city that actually has we know for sure had a wall at the time is Yerushalayim. There's a whole list of cities. I found a list of them. I wanted to bring it in. Read out a list of all the cities that are Sophic that we're not sure. I forgot to bring it. Maybe
Jerusalem
on Tuesday.
Jerusalem and Jericho are the two that we know for sure.
Even Jericho they treat as a Sophic because they're not sure exactly about the location if it's exactly in the same place as the original Jericho. So they treat it as a Sophic. I had a whole list of places. I saw a list. Maybe I'll try and bring it in. Hebron, Beit Shan, Jaffa. I'll try and bring in the list of all the places that are Sophic, which reads on the 14th and the 15th.
So all these cities were actually not walled by Joshua. They were walled by the Canaanites.
Correct. Right. Correct. We're talking about cities that were ruled before, not by the Jews. They were ruled by the Canaanim when Yeshua came in. That's correct.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's continue. Just one other sifkot before we continue. There's another one we skipped over that I think we should look at. Sifkot Ches. So now on the next page, on page 303, in the Mishnah Sifkot Ches, which is about 8 lines from the bottom of the Mishnah. Okay, it says, it's very important halacha. Someone who is a member of a walled city, and therefore his halacha is to read on the 15th. He cannot read and pater someone who lives in an unwalled city, who has a mitzvah for the Yodaled. Because they're two separate chiyuvim, right? We are chayiv on the 14th, someone who lives in Yerushalayim is chayiv on the 15th, right? One of us would not be able to go to Yerushalayim and read for someone in Yerushalayim, because they're chayiv on the 15th and we're chayiv on the 14th, right? So if one of us should travel to Yerushalayim on the 15th, right, and find someone who hasn't heard the Megillah, can you read for me? The answer is no, I can't read for you. It's two separate chiyuvim. You can only read for someone who's chayiv on the same day as you. Right? That's important.
Interesting.
Okay, now let's continue from where we're up to. Let's continue. We're up to now the Shulchan Aruch Seif Vav. So turn the page again. Let's continue. On page 304, Seif Vav. Seif Vav, the third line from the top. Yom Tes Vav Shechol Yesh B'Shabbos. When the 15th falls on Shabbos. Ein koirin ha-Megillah b'Shabbos, elo makdimin lekoizo b'erev Shabbos. One does not read the Megillah on Shabbos, however, one reads it on Erev Shabbos. Okay? The way it works out with the calendar, because the calendar is fixed nowadays, we don't do it according to Eidim, right? We have a fixed calendar. So the way it's fixed, it turns out that Purim, Yud-Daled, can never fall on Shabbos. Our Purim never falls on Shabbos. However, Purim can fall on Friday, and therefore, the Purim in Yerushalayim, Tes Vav, can fall on Shabbos. It's very common. Okay, so we're discussing now what happens when Purim falls on Shabbos, and the Shulchan Aruch tells us that you don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. You read the Megillah one day early on Erev Shabbos, on Friday.
So everybody's reading the same day.
Everyone's reading on the same day, correct. Not all the mitzvahs, we're going to see, not all the mitzvahs of Purim are going to be on the same day, but the reading of the Megillah happens on Friday. Right? Matonis Levyonim is also on the same day. We're talking for Yerushalmi, someone in Yerushalayim. They read the Megillah on the Friday, and they give Matonis Levyonim on Friday. It's very interesting. The Purim Megillah, the Purim Kriyas HaTorah takes place on Shabbos, right? So in Karmi'El, in such a year, we'll be reading the Megillah and be reading the regular Vayov HaMolech, the regular Purim reading on the Friday. In Yerushalayim, they'll be reading the Megillah on the Friday without Kriyas HaTorah. Interesting, right? It's like a half Purim. The Kriyas HaTorah takes place on Shabbos. They take out a second Sefer Torah and read it as Mafti. V'oimim ala nisim, and they say ala nisim on Shabbos. Ve'ein oisin sudas Purim ad yom echad b'Shabbos. And they read, and they have the Sud of Purim on Sunday. Right? So if all the mitzvahs of Purim split up over 3 days, this is known as Purim Meshulosh. Right? There's Purim split over to Meshulosh, Nosh, and Shalosh. Purim split into 3 days. Right? Various different mitzvahs of Purim happen on Friday, some happen on Shabbos, some happen on Sunday.
So the benching that includes on Nisim, not the davening.
Right.
only on Sunday? Or only on Shabbos? Or when do they say Al Nissim and benching?
For the Suda. Sunday, I would say.
They don't say on Friday. On Erev Shabbos they don't say Al Nissim. When they read the Megillah, there's no Al Nissim. Right. On Shabbos they say Al Nissim.
They do.
They say Shabbat.
Right.
Right. But the eating on Sunday.
When they eat on Sunday, do they say Al Nissim? Let's have a look at the Mishnah. We'll see what he says. I don't remember. Okay, but it's very interesting. You find it happens to be in Yerushalayim. There's a big problem. When I was there, everyone was talking about it, right? Chutznikim. What siddur do Chutznikim use?
What's the one? Sorry.
Which siddur do Chutznikim use? What's the famous siddur that everyone uses? Art school. Right. Everyone uses art school, right? That's the famous siddur of the Chutznikim. Everyone uses art school, right? Even if you live in Yerushalayim, you use an art school siddur, right? That's what everyone does, right? Problem is, right, and you use the art school siddur on Purim, which falls on Shabbos. This is a particular case, right? In the middle of Shemona Esrei, right? There's no Al Nissim written there. There's no Al Nissim printed, because the art school siddur is printed for Chutz La'aretz, right? They don't print the Minhagim of Eretz Yisrael in art school siddur. Now, there are many Chutznikim in Eretz Yisrael who were using it, and they got very confused. They didn't. A lot of people I know who didn't say Al Nissim. Because it doesn't say in the art school, I obviously don't say Al Nissim, which is a mistake. Right? So
I think Koren does. I think the Koren siddur does have the Al Nissim there.
Okay, good. Well, one should bear that in mind. The art school siddur is printed for Chutzlaret. If you happen to be using art school siddur in Yerushalayim on the 15th, you have to add in Al Nissim, even though it's not in the Shabbat Shemona Esrei. You'll find it in the weekday Shemona Esrei. It's not in the Shabbat Shemona Esrei. Okay. So let's have a look at the Mishnah Berurah. So, Kotten Yudalit, he tells us the Ilu Yudalit Yesh L'chol b'Shabbos. We mentioned the 14th of Adar cannot fall on Shabbos. So, Kotten Tesvav, Ein Kohen. Why don't they read the Megillah on Shabbos? Why do they bring it day early? Mishnah Berurah Tesvav tells us to go to Rabbanon Shem Yedich Eitza Chocham L'Lamdo. We're worried that he's going to carry the Megillah in the Rishus HaRabbim. The same reason why we don't blow shofar on Shabbos and we don't take the lulav on Shabbos. Same reason we don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. We're worried he'll carry it in the Rishus HaRabbim. So if you couldn't test Zayin on Megillah b'Shabbos, v'oz yom HaShabbos ches la'adar hu Parsha Zochar. The Shabbos beforehand is Parsha Zochar. The Maftir Pokadati, and we also have the regular Haftorah of Parsha Zochar on the Shabbos beforehand. The Gam b'Tezvov la'adar Maftir Pokadati b'Krachim. He says that on the 15th we read that same Haftorah in Yerushalayim. They'll read the same Haftorah Pokadati and the same Haftorah as Parsha Zochar. Ava ba'Yoris Maftir b'Seder HaShavua. The regular places like Karmi'El will return to the regular Haftorah of the Parsha. Right? Whereas in Yerushalayim, because the Maftir is Vayov Amolik, so they'll have a special Maftir. Whereas in the other places, they have a regular Maftir, the regular Parsha, therefore the Haftorah will be regular Parsha. There's the halach of all Yom Tovim that one on the day of the Yom Tov one is supposed to ask shaylas and supposed to darshan the halachos of that particular day. So this will apply on the Purim that falls on Shabbos on the 15th day. Kadesh Yizku in Hayom. Kushachol Bayom Yutzin Alavei Kriyas HaMegillah. One zutz to read the Megillah when it falls during the weekday. So they say Al Nissim only on Shabbos and not on Erev Shabbos. They don't say Al Nissim on the day they read the Megillah. They don't say Al Nissim. Right? It's a bit confusing, but we have to bear that in mind. However, the Mishnah Berurah does mention that because their day is supposed to be on the 15th, not the 14th. However, if someone would, by mistake, say Al Nissim on the 14th, right? Someone in Yerushalayim says Al Nissim on the 14th by mistake, in this particular, right? He doesn't go back. He doesn't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. Also, you don't take out the Sefer Torah on the 14th, right? In Yerushalayim, in this Purim Shulush. In places without a wall, they do say Alanissim on the 14th, like in every other year. Not on the 15th. A city that is Mesupik, we're not sure if they had a wall or not. All the cities we mentioned, they're not sure if they had a wall. So they say Alanissim on both days, on the 14th and the 15th. Right? So if one's in Hebron or Bet Shan or Yafa, again, I'll try and bring in a list. It says Alanissim on both days, the 14th and the 15th. So if got in Yudches, they know in the Chula, Domina B'Yusham B'Vyasu Oisam B'Shabbos, Omalei Yemish B'Mishtaksiv. The Yerushalmi says, maybe we should make Purim, we should have the Sudas Purim on Shabbos, right? In the case where the festival for Shavuot on Shabbos, perhaps the Sudas Purim should be on Shabbos. The Yerushalmi says, it says in the Megillah, Yemei Mishta, they made it into a day of feasting. And they made it into a day of simcha. It implies that it wasn't previously a day of feasting. Now Shabbos is always a day of feasting. Right. So it can't be that. So we learn from those words that they made it into a day of feasting. That the day of feasting is never on a day that was already previously a day of feasting. So therefore, the main mission is never Shabbos, and rather it's pushed over to Sunday. From there we learn that we don't have the Sudas Purim ever on Shabbos. Also, Shlach Monos is on Sunday.
So is there anything that you do on Shabbos when it actually falls on Shabbos in Yerushalayim?
Sorry?
Are there any mitzvahs I'm confused.
It's not the main mitzvahs, but one has the Alanissim and the Purim Megillah reading on Shabbos.
You do those two on Shabbos?
Right,
no, how can you do the Megillah reading
Sorry,
on Shabbos?
I didn't mean the Megillah reading. The Torah reading.
You have the Torah reading for Purim on Shabbos.
That's correct. And Alanissim.
And you say Alanissim in the davening.
Right. Whereas...
But you don't say Alanissim in the meals of Shabbos. Or we don't know the answer.
Right, well it says in the meal of Shabbos, correct. Alanissim on Shabbos.
Both in the davening and in the meal of Shabbos, you say.
So on Friday, we have two on each day. On Friday we have the Megillah reading and Matan Savyonim. On Shabbos one has Alanissim and the Torah reading. And on Sunday one has the Su'udah and Mishlach Monos.
Got it.
Right, so it's actually much more, one has much more time with the Su'udah. Because one doesn't have the Megillah reading. You have to hear the Megillah and then your wife hear the Megillah. It takes up the whole morning often. Yeah. One does have Shlach Monos in the morning and then one can go straight into the Su'udah. He brings a different opinion. He brings here an opinion that holds that the Su'udah should be on Shabbos. We've also came Ma'aseh B'Yushalayim. And the Marech Chaviv was the Rav in Yerushalayim around the time of the Beis Yosef, around 500 years ago, and that's how he paskened in his day. The Mishlach Monos always goes together with the Su'udah. He held that the Su'udah and the Mishlach Monos both take place on Shabbos. Or Radvaz, Chelek Aleph Kof Mem Zayin, Posach Kal Shulchan Aruch. The Radvaz, who was a Rav at the same time, he was a Rav in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. He held like the Shulchan Aruch. V'chein Ukam Kin Das Amor Avram, or Kol Ben Nesana. A couple of generations later, also passing like the Shulchan Aruch. And that's how we paskin, right? We do it on Sunday. The Pri Chodesh holds that a Megillah is muktzah on Shabbos because you can't read it as muktzah. Have a number of achronim disagree and hold that the Megillah reading is on. That the Megillah is not muktzah on Shabbos. Okay.
Shofar is muktzah on Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos.
So it says that one shouldn't after one's been yotze, one shouldn't move it unnecessarily. says children are allowed to. We encourage children to practice blowing so they learn how to blow. So it's Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah Shabbos.
On Shabbos. Is it different on Shabbos? I'm thinking about regular Rosh Hashanah. Because Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov as well. Right? After one blows in the one isn't supposed to.
No, not telling me go. I'm asking shofar on Shabbos.
Shofar on Rosh Hashanah. On a regular Rosh Hashanah. On a regular Rosh Hashanah, even when it's Yom Tov. Right? One isn't supposed to. After one's Yom Tov, one isn't supposed to move the shofar unnecessarily, even on the regular Yom Tov, even when it doesn't fall on Shabbos.
Right.
However, one does encourage children to blow. Children are allowed to. We want them to learn how to do the mitzvah.
But
if it falls on Shabbos, I said even on Yom Tov one shouldn't move it unnecessarily. If it falls on Shabbos, then there's no reason to move it at all. Then it's completely muksa.
It is muksa.
On a regular Yom Tov, one can carry it in order to blow it,
right?
And even afterwards, one shouldn't.
Right.
On Shabbos, one doesn't blow it at all, so one shouldn't move it at all.
Right.
So just going back to this halacha of the Mishnah Berurah, where he mentioned this opinion of the opinion to the Suda and the Mishach Monos on Shabbos itself, there are those who are machmir. He brings in the Shati in the bottom that there are people who are machmir to do that. You will find in Yerushalayim some people who will on Shabbos give one Mishach Monos and make sure on a certain Shabbos to drink some wine to be according to opinions that hold that the Shushan Purim was on Sunday. Is on Shabbos. Okay. Okay, it's 22.
Thank you.
Okay.